comic industry is often looked upon as a male-dominated field, but there are a lot of women out there that make the comic industry a success. I'm Phil in Toronto.
I'm Nick in New York. This episode
has been dominated by men long enough. I'm Ashna in LA, and this episode of the Anti-Gravity Room has
been dominated by Ashna long enough. I'm Heidi McDonald of the Friends of Lulu and Disney Adventures. Elisa Whitney, Roberta Gregory, Strangers in Paradise, and Manya on the Anti-Gravity Room.
It's safe to say that Roberta Gregory's been drawing all her life. She's done titles such as Dynamite Damsels, Feminist Funnies, and her latest one from Fantagraphics, Naughty Bits.
Well, Bitchy Bitch originally started out kind of as a joke, like a one-dimensional character that I did for a short story, and she kind of grew into like a well-rounded character. She's like a 40-something working woman. Originally, she was just going to be like the last person in the world I'd want to like sit in a restaurant with or travel with. I mean, she's somebody that always expects the worst and gets it. She kind of sees what's wrong with the world, but she really doesn't have the, she hasn't evolved the tools to actually deal with it or to find an outlet or to actively change it, so she gripes a lot. She has a lot of really colorful inner monologues that a lot of people can really identify with. I kind of think of her as a negative role model, somebody that I hope people don't identify with, but on the other hand, a lot of readers seem to be able to identify with her anger. People really get a kick out of her mouth, and it's like a lot of fun to draw. It'll form a triangle, it'll like, you know, form a wedge shape as she gets upset. I mean, you know, it'll like hang off the side of her face when she really, you know, gets depressed. Well, I've always done comics about subject matter that wasn't normally done in comics. I always have ideas that are, you know, kind of not in sync with what's going on. I guess my biggest influence for the comics is just life. I mean, just seeing what's going on, seeing like what kind of stupidity passes, especially in the U.S. for, you know, like common sense. And yeah, I think where other people get angry, I see like story ideas. I mean, where other people get frustrated, I see like potential characters. I mean, I'd probably be Bitchy Bitch if I did not have like a creative outlet.
This just in. Barry Windsor Smith's latest creation, published by Dark Horse Comics, is a large-format fantasy anthology called Storyteller, available now. In 1997, Donkey Kong College will open. Sponsored by Nintendo of America, it offers a degree in video game and computer animation programming. Just in time for Halloween comes She, Kaden from Crusade. This anthology is devoted to Japanese ghost stories and written by these guys at the bottom of the screen.
Strangers in Paradise is a look inside a complex love triangle.
It's a comic where nothing explodes, no one flies, and everyone seems to have normal-sized breasts.
Interesting.
All right, I'm with Terry Moore. How you doing, Terry?
Hi.
You like my glasses, don't you?
I like your glasses a lot.
Do you want to wear them?
Yeah, do I have to pay for that?
No. These are pre-convention special.
Yeah?
Now, you check them out while I ask you questions about Strangers in Paradise.
Okay.
So what's the premise of this book?
I wanted to write a book about people we could meet. I wanted to write a book about the kind of girls that we would actually meet and fall in love with. Well, me anyway.
It's not the typical women in the comics.
No.
Why?
Because I was really burned out on that. And I think there's a lot of readers burned out on, you know, the Babe Watch girl, the anorexic model with the implants and all that. And, you know, I just don't know very many women like that. And I wanted to write about, you know, the kind of girls that you meet in high school, you know, and they're really cute and they're really pretty. Maybe they got one little flaw, and maybe that's what really makes them even better.
Now, who do you think your audience is with Strangers in Paradise?
You know, everything from 15-year-old readers who read Spawn and 1013 and Strangers in Paradise, all the way up to the 45-year-old guys who are totally burned out, and this is the last comic that they read. You know. So I don't know. Right now, it's across the board.
Now, do you find like there are a lot of like women reading it?
Yeah. Man, I can't tell you how many people have told me that, where they say, I gave this to my girlfriend or my wife, and she doesn't read comics at all, and I gave this to her, and now she's totally hooked on it, man.
So you've had training as a film editor, is that right?
Yeah, I spent about 10 or 15 years doing that, and it really helped me out in the comic a lot because I don't approach the comic from the standard Will Eisner's story sequencing. What I do is I see this movie in my head, and the comic book is still frames from the movie. When the guy sits down to edit this on the Avid or whatever, he's gonna say, okay, you know, it's getting boring here. Chop it up, make it up, put an insert, put a crowd insert, now do his hands and all that. Same thing you do in the comic, you know.
All right, Terry, thanks a lot. You want to try on the glasses before we go?
Yeah, I want to do it. Probably not as cool as you.
Let's get your take on this whole woman in comics thing. This week's anti-gravitational poll is, can you name 3 strong female comic book characters?
3 strong female characters that I like are Wonder Woman, Batgirl, and Catwoman. Wonder Woman! Catwoman, rawr. And Storm from the X-Men. Props to all the skaters in Venice. Yahoo!
Probably the strongest 2 female characters in comics right now are Francine and Ketchu from Strangers in Paradise by Terry Moore, which is an alternative comic which has real women. They wear normal clothes, they don't have throat sets in here, and it's very real and very exciting comic book.
If you ask Iggy what his favorite comic is, I'd say it would be Godzilla.
Welcome to CE Ramathon, and I'm with Shannon Smith. Shannon, is that Miss or Mrs.?
Miss.
Okay, and what are we looking at here at Microsoft?
This is called Microsoft Deadly Tide. It's a new underwater action shooter adventure game that's going to be out in October.
Okay, and the whole point, it's a shooter game.
It is. It's in the action category of games, really designed for a casual gamer because it's simply a point-and-click kind of action. There's not tons of strategy involved, so for someone that's kind of looking at getting into games and wants to see what it's all about, this is a great title for them.
Who did the design for the look?
We actually worked with Hollywood designers from Star Trek Next Generation and Sequest, so it really comes out in the graphic quality. It looks like a cinematic feature film more so than a graphic video game.
Very good graphics and actual really great sound. Now, I'm using the joystick with this, but what other options do I have in terms of
You can also
control?
use a mouse as well. You just simply point, and by clicking the mouse button, that's how you shoot your firing weapons. There's certain parts of the game where it's like you're on a rail and the game completely guides you to certain areas. There's other parts of the game where you do have total movement, 360 degrees to move around and look around. On the second level of the game, for instance, you're actually competing inside a battleship, and so you can move completely around, look through different tunnels and that sort of thing, but it will guide you in many instances.
I noticed the joystick's very, very sensitive.
Yeah, that's our Sidewinder 3D Pro joystick. It's actually a digital joystick, and we use digital technology to send communication lines to the computer, so it's a much faster response than a joystick that are typically out in the market right now.
Phil's not saving the Earth today. Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
And you know what? By playing this, I'm going to have to give it about 4 Gs out of 5. What do you think of that?
That's great.
Yeah, it's a good shooter game. It's a no-brainer for me, which is good for me. But yeah, it's a nice game, good look, good sound, and I love blowing stuff up. So.
Next, Alyssa Whitney of Vertigo, Sarah Dyer, and we'll find out why women are half naked,
while the men remain fully clothed.
Okay, everybody, I'm here in Elevator Land with Alyssa Whitney, editor of such books as Mythos, The Dreaming, and upcoming Fault Lines. Now, what does an editor do, Alyssa?
Nag writers for story pages that haven't come in to feed to inkers who are desperately asking for work. Tell inkers that the hand was really a claw, so they have to redo it so it looks like a claw. Make sure that the advertising of Mythos, the final tour, you know, is agreeable to the writer and the artist and everybody else, and lots of other things that I'm forgetting right now.
There are a lot of female editors here at Vertigo. Do you think that changes the books at all?
I think that hopefully as women editors, we have a sense of what might appeal to women as well as to men. When I was a little girl, I once complained to my mother that all the books had little boys as heroes. And she said, well, little girls don't mind reading about little boys, but little boys don't want to read about little girls. Hopefully that's kind of changing.
What do you think women bring to comics?
Well, I think they bring a different kind of fantasy, possibly. Neil Gaiman in A Game of You has a theory that little boys start off by fantasizing that they're, behind their mild-mannered exterior, there's a superpowered being ready to save the world. And little girls more have the fantasy that their parents are not their parents, they're the secret princesses of lost kingdoms. So I think that maybe there's a little bit of a difference in the kind of escape from reality that women are aiming at. And as adults, I think that women are drawn to character-driven stories and psychologically complex characters, and maybe a little less drawn to quests and battles and that sort of goal-oriented story.
When you take the words action and girl and put them together, who do you think of? Pamela Anderson as Barb Wire is a close second. Sarah Dyer would be the correct answer. Check her out.
Okay, folks, I'm here with Sarah Dyer, creator of Action Girl and resident of Staten Island. Now, Sarah, how did you get started with Action Girl?
Exactly how it started is a friend of mine named Elizabeth Wattasson and I were talking about how we really wanted to do comics with our own female characters. And we really couldn't get a book going. And then I got the idea to do this anthology. So we asked some other girls to contribute doing their own kind of work. And so the book is basically a mixture of the stories that Elizabeth and I do with female superheroes, mixed in with just sort of alternative anthologies type stories. Some of the main contributors that we have are Patty Leidy, who does the real classic slice of life kind of stories about roommates. We have Chris Toby, who does a really solid humor kind of a thing. We have Rebecca Dart, who interprets folk tales. So we have a really wide range of contributions and styles of work in the anthology.
Now, you did it because you wanted to do your own female characters. Did you think there were a lack of those when you started it?
Well, definitely, because, I had read all these superhero comics as a kid, and I came back reading comics, and sure, there's stuff like Love and Rockets out there, but when I looked at the superhero comics, I didn't like any of the characters that were female in the superhero comics, so I really wanted to bring back the kind of female superheroes that I liked as a kid.
Since you were a big fan of the super characters when you were a kid, is it cool to you that you're working on the Superman animated series now?
Absolutely. It's my dream comes true. I'm actually considering Supergirl was my favorite character growing up, and I'm actually going to be working on the origin of Supergirl in a television show. I was like, my life is over. I'm happy.
Jen Banka and Chris Dressen are two women behind the very successful independent comic book, Manya. We caught up with them in Milwaukee to hear what they had to say. And through the marvels of modern television, not only will you be able to hear them, but you'll be able to see them as well.
Comics are just something I've loved since I was a kid, and I've always wanted to do something on somewhat of a professional level.
I sent some short stories that I wrote to Chris, who illustrated them. My background is not in comic art. I work primarily in poetry and performance and theater. And Chris's background is in comic art.
I didn't want to pursue the superhero or the Barbie Archie type comic thing, but when Jen sent me these stories, I thought it was the perfect thing to try and develop into a comic, and it's worked incredibly well.
It started as a series of internal monologues. The character is a young female who really just is exploring her life and the environment around her, her friends, the issues that she faces. It's a humorous character, it's a serious character. She talks about her childhood, about her work, about her friends and family.
This is the only comic book out there that has a strong, real, I'll use the word real, female character. She's not a superhero, she's not a victim, she's a woman who's strong and takes herself seriously.
We're committed to the character and have plans of putting the book out twice a year, as long
so one
as
of
we
us
can
dies.
stand each other.
Comicopia, Trina Robbins, and Phil and Nick model Speedos and are objectified by Heidi and myself.
Hey, what's up, fellow Pepsi drinkers? I'm Nick at the Staten Island Ferry with Comicopia, my weekly chance to float my boat while talking about comics. First up this week is the Witchblade Collection. This book is about Sarah, a homicide detective that, while on a case, is forced to wear an alien glove that mysteriously heals her facial wounds. As Sarah investigates the origin of this odd item, she finds she's involved in something that goes much deeper than she thought. The writing is pretty good, but I was disappointed at the demeaning attire some of the women in this book are put in. The art is absolutely great. It totally took me by surprise. The guys at Top Cow are some of the biggest talents in their field. Witchblade is a pretty good book. I give it 3.9 out of 5 Gs on the anti-gravity scale. Next up, we have the greatest vampire I know, and that's counting Tom Cruise. Vampirella of Draculon, number 5. If you don't know, Vampirella is about a female vampire who fights crime with her superpowers and hangs out with me on her spare time. In this adventure, Vampy trudges through the Rockies to find Cornelius Devlin, a man suspected of draining the blood of dead plane crash victims. Ew. The writing on this book is somewhat cheesy, but it's Vampirella. Cheesy writing is a tradition on it. It's like a nostalgic trip back to the dawn of comics. The art has a very angular Jay Lee feel to it. Very cool. Vampirella is an eternal classic, and I give it 3 out of 5 Gs on the anti-gravity scale. Next up, we have House of Secrets, my trip to the underbelly of DC's offices. This comic is about Rain, a tough hitchhiker chick who's in a band, the Hitchhikers. In the wrong place at the wrong time, Rain is drawn into the world of the supernatural, and we are left with a cliffhanger of an ending. This book is pretty cool. It shows the lead female character is an independent woman who can take care of herself. House of Secrets follows the trend of all Vertigo books by being superior in the writing category. As for the art, it sets the mood with a dark, sketchy tone and proves that you can have good writing and good art in the same book. House of Secrets is a great book for Vertigo fans and anyone else, so I give it 4 out of 5 Gs on the anti-gravity scale. Well, that's it from the Promised Land this week. See you next time.
Now, you can't talk about women in comics without mentioning Trina Robbins. She's well-versed on the subject for 2 reasons. 1, she's authored books on women cartoonists and comic heroes. And 2, she's a woman and she works in comics.
My name is Trina Robbins. I've been drawing comics since before at least 50% of this country was born. Make it 75%. Back in the days when we used to carve them in stone and call them underground comics. I've been writing since 1990. I can't remember all the comics I've drawn because goes back, as I say, to the prehistory of comics, but I can remember the books because I didn't carve them in stone. There have been tons of books about superheroes, but they write very few books, or in fact, they've written no books about superheroines. When they mention superheroines at all, it tends to be very negative. They do this kind of nudge, nudge, wink, wink thing. They do, oh, her skin-tight costume revealed her curves. Now, no one ever says Superman's skin-tight costume reveals his masculine, bulging biceps. They only say this about women. Today in comics, the superheroine has fallen. It's really sad how low she has fallen in this male-dominated industry. I had to talk about what there used to be. I had to talk about the terrific superheroines and the terrific role models there used to be that really were, that women read, that girls read. I'm really aiming this book at women, and I'm specifically aiming this book at women who don't really read comics because there's nothing in the comics now that interests them. I want them to see what there used to be in comics. I want them to realize what fabulous images there used to be in comics. All of these characters are from the 40s, of course, which was the golden age for superheroines. It's called the golden age of comics. This is Miss Mask, and Miss Mask, like so many other heroines, had a boyfriend who didn't know who she was. Phantom Lady, on the other hand, didn't even wear a mask. Lady Luck is a great character. She was another debutante who disguised herself with this little, just this little thing, this little filmy thing around her, her nose and mouth. And Moon Girl, who is one of my favorites. Moon Girl is not from the moon, actually, despite her strange face with the little high forehead and the funny little eyebrows. Moon Girl is from Samarkand, and they called her Princess of the Moon. I have this belief that when people know how terrific things used to be, that they can demand that it be that way again.
Mailbag, up next.
We always want to know what you have to say.
Curtis writes, I'd just like to say that your show is quite chunky. Hey, P.S., that's a good thing. Well, Curtis, thank you very much, and you're chunky too.
Onslaught writes, I love the show. Oh, sure, you think you can destroy Marvel's greatest heroes and just make it okay by saying you love the anti-gravity room? Well, mister, we have standards here, and until those heroes come back, you can be sure you're getting the cold shoulder from us. Oh, wait, they're back already? That was fast.
Women in comics, definitely a subject worth returning to again and again and again and again and again and again.
But
I agree. Why should the boys have all the fun?
Wait,
Women in comics play a very important role, and it should be acknowledged more often.
Wait a minute.
What is it, Phil?
I just want to make sure I got the last word in. See you next time on the Anti-Gravity Room.
Their strings have been cut, but they're still showing signs of life. Who controls these fiendish marionettes with a taste for blood? The Puppet Master, part of the Puppet Master Quartet, 9 p.m. Eastern, Sci-Fi Monday. In the future, the war between heaven and hell takes place in virtual reality. One man must guard the entrance to salvation. Carver's Gate, a Sci-Fi Channel original movie. Today at 4 p.m. Eastern, Sci-Fi Saturday. Now stay tuned for The Odyssey, coming up next on the Sci-Fi Channel.